I'm Bill Bishop, the CEO of the Big Idea Company. In this video, I'm going to talk about what I call the 11% solution. And I'm going to explain why investing 11% of your time in the future will change everything. Now, most of us in business, we get stuck in the status quo. I call it your old factory. And we spend 100% of our time on that. And it is not a good idea to do that. Okay. And the reason is, of course, is that we could get disrupted, but we could also get bored, and our customers could get bored of what we're doing. So we always need to be thinking about the future and working on the future. So our suggestion is we spend 11% of our time doing that. So in this video, I'm going to explain why that's going to change everything. It's going to help you create incredibly new things that are going to be very valuable and lucrative for you. It's going to get you really excited about the future. And it's also going to help you future-proof your business, because we're in an age now where technology, like especially AI, is going to change everything. So by 2030, the world's going to look a lot different, and your business is going to have to change. And it might have to change in a dramatic way. So watch this video, and I'll explain why that's actually an exciting thing, and how to use the 11% solution to build the future business of your dreams. So today what we're going to talk about, I call it the 11% solution. And it's about investing time in the future, 11% of your time in the future. And I'll talk about why I say 11%. You might think, well, maybe I should just say 10%, but 11%. And this is not something that most people do. Okay. So this is how generally speaking, my experience has been that people are running their business. They spend 100% of the time on their, what I call their existing or old factory, and 0% thinking about or working on the future. And eventually the future catches up with them. And I came across a statistic. It was the Wharton School of Business had done a study of more than 1,000 companies. And they came back and said that 92% of all companies, their business plan for next year is the same business plan they have for this year. They just basically make, a copy of it and say, let's just do that again. Okay. So, and of course, what they came up with is how many times those companies got disrupted. But then they started looking at the 7% that were spending time, reinventing themselves, like continuously thinking, okay, what are we going to do differently next year, right? And going forward, even beyond next year. And those 7% of companies were growing 3 times more, like 300% more than those other companies were. And of course, a lot of the 92% didn't grow at all because they actually went out of business, right? And we have lots of examples of that. And I'll got a little funny little cartoon I made with AI in a minute. I'll show you that. But so this has always been something that I believed in, is that you want to keep working on your existing business, but you want to always be working on the future as well. And think of these as two different things. So as opposed to just thinking, okay, I'm just going to keep improving my existing business, which is still a good idea at some level, but actually be thinking, well, what would be that completely new business in the future? And that's when you can really innovate. So our basic advice is to say 89% of your time on the old factory and 11% on your new factory. Now, I'm going to just tell you how I figured this out for myself. And I had a number of examples of this, and I just continually use this as a way to go. So when I was in journalism school at Ryerson, now it's called Metropolitan University, that was about around 1980. And as a lot of you know, I worked at the Keg Steakhouse, and I won that lobster contest. So that was kind of fun. And then what happened though was that I graduated. Okay, and then I started looking for a job, and it wasn't that easy to find a job in journalism those days. And the jobs that I was offered, I got offered a job on a newspaper for $200 a month. And I thought to myself, well, I'm actually making $200 a night at the restaurant. So it was sort of hard for me financially to do that. Um, I couldn't afford that really. So I was working as the waiter, and it wasn't meant for me to just be, I wasn't trying to become a waiter, right? I was getting kind of depressed that I was going to be stuck working in the restaurant. And but then I had a big idea. And the big idea was to start a community entertainment magazine in the area of Toronto where that restaurant was, which is like Yonge and Eglinton, if you know Toronto. So I decided to call it Uptown Magazine. So one of the other waiters and he had graduated too, and he was kind of in the same fix. We said, okay, let's start this business running this magazine. And so now what was going on was at night I was working in the restaurant, and in the evenings and during the day and on weekends I was working on getting this magazine off the ground. And the first issue was kind of amazing. It was 6 months we came out with it, and we actually made a profit on the first issue because we sold all the advertising to go in it. So right away we made a profit, and we were feeling good because we had this job working in the restaurant and we had this business that was making money. Well, after 6 months of running the magazine, we both quit working at the restaurant. Okay, so we sort of, did that jump, right? Um, and then what happened was going forward. So we published that for a number of years, and then I said, okay, well, I want to go and work in a corporate marketing company. So I decided to do that. So for 2 years, I worked in this corporate marketing company, Ogilvy and Mather, advertising company, and I learned a lot, but I knew I wanted to have my own business. So what I did was I started working on my new factory on the evenings and on the weekends to get a publishing business going, like to get that going again, but make it a bigger thing. So I was working on these two things at once. And then one day I just went in and gave my notice, and they were very surprised. And the next day I started full time in this business. I already had 10 clients already, and everything moved along there. Okay, so I did that, and that was going along great. And I thought, well, what's the next thing? And that was like, well, you need to have an internet company. So that was 1989. So I thought we're going to start an internet company. So I was running this publishing business, and I said, let's also start 11% of our time on the internet company. And that was called the Big BBS. It was called Big BBS Company, ultimately called Bishop Information Group. And that became unbelievably successful, actually. And was another leap, right? So we kept doing the old factory, though. I kept doing publishing, but now I had this internet company. The next leap was to go from the internet company to being a speaker about digital marketing and marketing general. So then I became a speaker. But the biggest leap that we made, which is the one I really want to talk about, is when we created the Big Idea Adventure Program and the Big Idea Company. Right. So that was 1998. And, I did some thinking about my business. That, ultimately we're just kind of plumbers of marketing. Sorry, somebody's coming in there. We're just plumbers of marketing. And what I really want to be is an architect, help people create big ideas for their business and so on. So what I did was, I went across the street to Starbucks and I worked on it over there, because at the old factory I had like 30 people working in this office, and it was a really crazy scene and lots of complexity and so on, many things going on. And so that was just, taking up all my time. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to spend some time, as I've learned, on the future, and I'll start to develop this big idea program. And I learn to just go to a different place. So this was key. So I went over to Starbucks and I had a little book like this, which is my current one. And I just started writing down my ideas for this big idea program. Um, and then I started meeting with clients actually at Starbucks and doing big idea sessions with them. And I said, I'm not going to do it in the old factory office. Like, I'm just not going to do it because I'll get distracted. So I did that, and it just kept becoming more and more successful until essentially that became the business. So I started spending more and more time. So I started 11%, and I started to um, spend more and more time on it because I was starting to make more and more money. Eventually, it was like 50-50. And then at a certain point, it was like 90% big idea company, 10% on the old factory, at least as far as the amount of time I was spending, because the old factory was still there and it was still making money, but it wasn't what I was focusing on myself in particular. And then at a certain point, I sold that business to my partner. And I just said to him, I said, listen, I'll just send any of my members, I will send to you. So you can see how the evolution kind of happened. Well, that was a really good thing that I went to Starbucks, because since then, we've had more than 5,000 members. Currently, we're at 5,650 members that started. So I started with one member at Starbucks, and we worked our way up now in that time to over 5,000 members. So if I hadn't taken the time to do that, right, then I wouldn't have ever had this program, and none of you would probably be here. So, and I don't know where my business would have gone, because all of the things that I was doing in those days become kind of commodities, right, or obsolete. So this is why I'm so passionate about helping people think about the future, because I know that we can get stuck where we are. Like those 92% of companies, they're just probably just so ingrained in what they're doing and maybe kind of worn out. And it's like, to even think about doing anything else is kind of doesn't even come on their radar, right? Doesn't even dawn on them that they should do such a thing, right? So I want to make sure that you're going to do that. Okay. Now, one of the things that I get pushback on is to say, well, you're telling me to reinvent myself, but what do I need to reinvent myself for? That we have a successful business already, And I say, well, yeah, there's been lots of successful businesses that said that, but because they didn't plan for the future, ultimately they weren't successful anymore. And there is an advantage to having been in business for 40 years, because I've seen that trajectory of so many companies, or so many people that said, this is amazing, we got it all figured out, we're good. And then something happens and it disrupts them, and then they either go out of business or it's extremely painful, right? Because they weren't thinking about what's next, right? They just thought, we're just so fat and happy right now. Why would we bother, right? Why would we bother? And there's really three reasons why you want to bother, okay? The first one is that you got to reinvent yourself because your customers are always changing. So what they like today isn't necessarily what they're going to like tomorrow, right? What they're going to buy, what they buy today may not be what they buy tomorrow, because something new comes along, right? Or they just, people's, they become more interested in something else, or, something changes, right? I mean, I remember learning about Hush Puppies. I don't know if you remember Hush Puppies, these shoes. Definitely showing my age now. Hush Puppies. I don't even know if they're around anymore, but when I was a kid, that was the ultimate shoe, right? They get some Hush Puppies, right? And they basically made the same shoe for like 50 years, and they didn't have to change that until people, preferences changed, and then nobody would be caught dead wearing Hush Puppies. I should look them up, because I forget even what they look like, but I know when I was a kid, in my mind, that was like the ultimate thing. Of course, then I guess it was because then I wanted to have Adidas running shoes. That was the hot running shoe back then. So anyway, So things change there. So the second thing is, of course, that technology comes along, right? And it changes everything. So that movie about BlackBerry, if you've seen that, um, there's this scene where they think they got it all figured out with BlackBerry, and then they watch this you know town hall or whatever Jobs called them, where he'd launch the iPhone, and they were all like, "Uh oh, we're in trouble now," and they sure enough they were, right. Okay, so that's the other thing, was we got to be cognizant that technology is going to change everything, and of course AI is the big one right now that's going to change everything. um, and then the third thing is that you're changing. So that was part of my thing, because I was interested in these things up to a point, and then I went, okay, I've done that. Now what? Do I just want to keep doing that forever, or do I want to do something new that'll be more interesting to me? And that was just kind of key to keeping me interested in what I'm doing. But it was also good business strategy, because if I was working on something that wasn't getting me excited, then how would I ever get anyone else excited about it? And I've really seen that, how a lot of businesses get really stale, because you're just doing the same thing over and over again. You're not that excited about it anymore, so it's hard to get other people excited about it. And it's just an emotional thing. It's just the way it is, right? So one thing, like when I was working in the restaurant, I was getting really depressed working in the restaurant, right? Like I'm graduated from university, I'm still working in the restaurant. That's bad, right? And I remember I was like, there was this woman I was quite interested in, and I dated her a few times. And then she came into the restaurant, and she said to me, she says, "Well, I thought you had a lot more going for you. Um, I didn't think you were just going to be a waiter." And I'm going, "Oh my god." Anyway, so but I was able to say, I'm working on this magazine, and then I showed her the magazine, and then I got another date out of her. Anyway, didn't work out, but that was like, oh my god, that was embarrassing. Anyway, so always want to have something very exciting to work on, right? Okay, because you're changing all the time too. So this is the reason why we want to reinvent ourselves, and that's why you want to invest that 11%. Okay, so this is kind of what we always should do. I think it's just the best business strategy, right? Now, I just made this little cartoon here. I'm going to show it to you. Okay, so I made this morning, actually. I spent all weekend playing around with OpenAI's ChatGPT's new image creator, which is taking everything to a whole other level. All right, and I actually I'll tell you this little story. I took a picture of my dog and my neighbor's two dogs, and then I made cartoon characters out of them. And then I had AI, with my help, make a whole comic book about those three dogs in the neighborhood chasing squirrels. It is really, really cute. I could send it to you if you want. But it was like, people are just like, "How did you create that?" And I go, AI. Okay. So anyway, so then I thought this morning that this is something I've always been talking about, so I thought I'd show it to you. So and make a cartoon for it. So this was cooked up this morning. So in 1995, I worked with Kodak, and I took this digital camera with my photographer to show the president of Kodak, Canada, and he thought that was just a joke. Like, he said, it's never going to work out. Everybody's always going to want to have film. That's what he said. No one's going to want to give up film. Well, honestly, God, I'm like, what are you, crazy? But he was so caught up in this old factory that he do it, right? So then you have like Sears, and I don't know if I'm putting words in this guy's mouth, but I heard this a lot in the 90s. No one's going to want to buy things online. They won't put their credit card in, and you got to touch things in order to buy them. And who's ever going to do that, right? And then Blockbuster said, well, streaming, and that's not going to happen. The internet's too slow, right? And now I'm hearing this about AI. So they're saying to me, well, it's all hype, or it's going to destroy the world, or I tried it and it really wasn't that great, and and it doesn't do this and it doesn't do that. I said, well, that's just because that's today's version. Next tomorrow, you'll be able to make comic books with it or whatever. They just can't see that. So this is what the world we're in right now is. You need to have some kind of plan for the future. So this is the thing that I've been working on during the pause. Okay. Um, is we don't want to be those people. Okay. We don't want to be those people. I believe that by 2030, we're all going to be doing something differently. And the world's going to look a lot different. Okay. And for a lot of reasons, politics and everything is one thing, but technology is kind of the main thing. Is that AI is accelerating, essentially at the power of 4 every 12 months. So what does that mean? That means that it's not Moore's law was the power of 2 every 18 months. Okay, if you know Moore's law, but the AI law is that it's accelerating at a pace of 4 times, like multiplier 4 every 12 months. So by the time we get to 2030, the improvement of it will be beyond anything we can imagine. Actually, it's like the if you're just doing it by numbers, the number would be so big that you couldn't even imagine that number. So what does that do when everything that we work on that begins? Let's start with just everything we do that requires thinking. You now have an AI that is unbelievably powerful. It should do that, right? Thinking and then creating things, an unbelievably empowering thing to do that. That this is just the ultimate example of a disruptor, right? And most people are not ready for it at all. Like I talked to these people last week, like they were really keen. We need to learn about AI. So what do you know about AI? Nothing. I say, well, you've had at least a couple of years. No, we haven't really done anything. I'm too busy with our old business, right? I said, well, you need to spend 11% of your time working on what the AI is going to do to your business. And I kind of laid that out, and they were like, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't think that's going to happen. And I go, yeah, well, here, and now I can show them the cartoon, right? So the question is, what will your business look like in 2030? And that's the project. Okay, so it's I have a project. I'm working on that. What's my project for 2030? So we've plot here at my company. We plotted it all out. This is where we think it's all going to go, and this is where we're going to take it. That was what I've been doing. Got this book out. I went to Starbucks, and I wrote down everything that I think is going to happen, and where I want to take it. That's my project 2030, and I know what we got to do and how we're going to get there. And of course, there's going to be a lot of things that we don't know yet, but so many things that we're going to be able to do that weren't able to do before, and I want to be able to do them. So I'm really excited about that. So what I want is to help you, or at least all of us help each other on our project 2030. So we got 5 years, okay? And 2030 is going to happen, okay? One way or the other. And when you get there, going to be kind of 3 scenarios probably. One is that you've been completely disrupted and you're out of business. Second one is you hung on as tight as possible to the status quo, right? Or you spend 11% of your time to start with on thinking about your project 2030 and go, this is where we're headed and we're going to get there. And you got there and you were in a way better position than everyone else that didn't do that. So this is what I'm suggesting is the kind of purpose of our network now, is our project 2030. So it's meant to get you thinking beyond today and all the little things that you got to deal with today that are important but urgent but not important, right? So we want to work on the things that are important but not urgent, because today particularly, one day, it's not that urgent to work on 2030. but it's important. But each day that could go by, you end up with, one day at a time to 2030, having done nothing. Okay, so this is the key thing. So let's just think about this concept, and it is the number one concept, new factory strategy. Okay, I did a video, full-length video, and a lot of you have watched it. So thank you very much for doing that. I'm going to send a link so you can watch the whole video and learn all about all 15 strategies. Okay, so if you haven't done that yet, I really encourage you to do that this week, is to watch that video. So it's all 15, all in context, and that'll set us all up for 2030. But what we're going to do in these meetings is go through each one in step, and this is the number one. And the reason why it's number one is because we got to carve out the time to work on this, right? So it's fine to think about all this and learn about it and everything, but if every day you just get up and do the same old thing, then we're not taking advantage of these ideas. So why do I say 11%? The reason is because it makes it more deliberate. Okay, if you just say 10%, it's like, oh yeah, I'm 10%, and you don't really think about it. But 11%, it just becomes more deliberative. You just say, okay, like, your mind will look at it more seriously because it's just not a round number. Okay, so that's the only reason it's 11%. But it's also not a large number. Okay, and that's very important too, because what people are going to innovation. People think they got to change everything, and you got to do it all. And you go, I haven't got time. Okay, and you don't have that much time. So, but you might have 11% of your time. And so you start to reflect on that. As you say, I don't have time, then you go, okay, are you using every moment of your day absolutely efficiently? And nobody can say that and answer that question in the affirmative. Okay, like there's no way, right? So you go, I can find 11% time to do this. That's all there is to it. I don't have to work 11% more. I just can find it in the old factory. And this is why the first beneficiary of this will be your old factory. Because what happened was with me was when I went to Starbucks, I told my people, I said, I'm going over there, don't bug me, and you guys take care of things. So they became more self-reliant. Okay. And then I started seeing things that were just a waste of time for me to do. And I said, forget that. I don't need to do that. And made my business, my old factory, more efficient. So right away, that'll help you. It'll make your old factory more efficient. Okay. So now we go somewhere else, some other place, and spend that 11% of time. And you might just sit down and go, I don't even know why I'm sitting here. What am I thinking about? Well, that's why new factory thinking will give you a process for that. Okay. So watch that video. But at least by sitting there, you will be thinking about, well, what do I really want in the future? And here's a nice little way to begin it, is to say, it's just a suggestion what you might want. Okay. So you think, what I'd like to have is I'd like to make 10 times more money, work 50% less time, like half the time, and I have 100 times more fun running my business. So I'm get away from all the things I hate doing and just do the things I love doing. That would be the thing to aspire to. And the reason why is it's not just like pie in the sky thinking. It's like, that's actually a really good strategy, because by saying I want to do that, make 10 times more money, work half the time, something's got to change. Like you can't keep just doing more of the same thing, because the more time, in the old factory, you could say, well, I could work half as much, but you might make half as much money, or I could work more and make more money, but then you're getting exhausted. You're already working enough. So you go, if I'm going to make 10 times more money, work half as much, and I got to change something. Somebody's got to be different about this. And we're all smart enough to actually figure that out. Because, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. So if you say, I got to have this. I can't do this anymore. I want to make 10 times more money, work half as much. See, the worry I have about AI, the way people are going to do it, is they're going to use it for their old factory. And I was reading this study by and let's say Ernst and Young, one of those companies, and they said, oh yeah, the companies are using AI, but what they're doing is they're training their employees and they're saving time on their work, and then they're just giving them more work to do. So the employees don't get any time benefit from that at all, right? So that's bad if you're working in the company. You're an entrepreneur. You don't have to have that problem. You don't have to give yourself more work to do. You want to do less, right? So now you have at least something to go on here. You can say, look at my calendar, and I go, okay, somewhere on my calendar, I'm going to put my 11% time in there. Okay, so that's what I do. I just go, okay, I have my, and this has just been a standing thing on my calendar forever now, is my new factory time. All right, I sometimes called it my Starbucks time, right? I didn't always go to Starbucks, but just put it in the calendar, like a half day every week, or a 1 day every 2 weeks, or 2 days every month, all at once if you want. I'd recommend it's more spread out a little bit, so you're working on it regularly. But put in your calendar as the first thing you actually put in your calendar after your holidays. Put holidays in your calendar first, okay? Then your new factory time, because the rest of it will be old factory. And then say, where am I going to go and do this? Different part of your office, different part of your house, some other place, like doesn't have to be Starbucks. Okay. One thing I did when I had one of my big projects I was working on, I went to different Starbucks. It was actually when I was writing my new factory book, actually, and I wrote it all in Starbucks, so I had to get out of the office. And what I would do is each time I would go to a different Starbucks in Toronto. Sometimes I would drive like 10 miles to get to a different one. I didn't want to be in the same Starbucks each time. I wanted to have a different environment every time to kind of stir things up. So that was a little nutty, but it worked out really well. Okay, so here's the suggestion. Okay, so like I say, 89% of your time old factory, 11% of your time new factory. Schedule a time in your calendar, different location, have some kind of book. I like a physical book because, where is it? A physical book because it's portable and doesn't require charging in any way. I find it's good to have a book. And when you're in that situation, then say, okay, well, think really big about what you're trying to do. Okay. And then, but you're going to start small. So when you come away from each thinking session, you go, what's one small thing that I could do to move this thing forward? Register a domain name, make a logo, right? Call someone that might partner with me. Sit down and watch a YouTube video and learn something, right? Invest some money in something, right? My 3 entrepreneurial things that are kind of key to keeping the pot boiling for the last 40 years for me was one, talk to people you never talked to before. Do some things you've never done before, whatever, even just like go bowling or something. And 3 is invest money in yourself, in your business. So even when you think, I don't have any money, that's when you would do it. Okay. Honestly, invest something in yourself. Because that'll force you to move forward because you've committed, right? So those are the things to do. Now, I'll just reiterate again why this is such a good strategy. Okay, is there's a bigger risk. There's less risk doing this than there is not doing this, right? If you spend 100% of your time on your old factory, that is unbelievably risky. All right, there's no way about it. 11% is not so much of an investment, and something really big might come of it, right? So the upside is very good. It's very energizing. As I've said, I always got a lot of energy out of the new things that I've been working on. Always looking for that. It'll help you break out of that incremental thinking. So people talk about innovation. And I go, no, that's just augmentation. That's not innovation. So augmentation is fine. To take something you already have and improve it, that's fine, up to a point, right? I remember with Kodak, it's interesting. I just remember this recently, was that they thought they were being very innovative in 1995 because in the magazines we were publishing, we were writing about the fact that they were using Enterprise Resource Planning 2, what's called ERP2. And it was this latest, greatest software system, networking system for optimizing their supply chain to make film. So that was their big technology project. Millions and millions of dollars on that. Okay. Zero money ultimately spent. They fiddled around with a little bit, but zero money ultimately on digital photography. Right? It's just crazy. So we could take AI and put it towards our existing business. But that might be like Kodak, developing a better system for film when digital photography is the future. So watch out for that. It's not a bad way to learn about AI is to use it for existing business, but what you really want to be thinking about is what would our industry and our business look like when AI is everything, right? Which is basically what it's going to be. AI will be everything, everywhere and everything. All the people, all the holdouts are just going to be farther behind that one. And then finally, it's just a way to overcome the status quo. We have what is known as the status quo bias as a human tendency, is that we tend to want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, I used to go to this workshop thing, and it was every quarter. And I remember the first day I went, I sat in this one table at this one table, this one chair, and there was like 60 people there, and everybody sat in their chair that first day, just kind of random, pick a spot, right? Literally 12 years later, everyone was sitting still in the same spot. They walk in, sit down in the same spot. Like there was no mandatory reason you had to. And then I remember I started realizing that and started sitting in different spots, and it really shook people up. It's like, wait a minute, you're in my spot. I said, you have no spot. But we tend to always want to sit in the same spot. Oh, that's going to kill you, right? So you just got to wake up and go, oh, I'm doing the same thing over and over again. That might not be good. Even if it's comfortable right now, right?